Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Bernie Sanders won the Nevada caucuses by a landslide, earning just over 47% of the vote, with 88% of precincts reporting. He more than doubled Joe Biden's vote count, who came in second at 21%. Pete Buttigieg came in third with close to 14%. Senator Elizabeth Warren placed fourth with 10% of the vote. Entrance polls showed Sanders picking up the most votes across many demographic categories, in particular among Latinx voters, where he received over half of the vote. Senator Sanders addressed his supporters at a victory speech in San Antonio, Texas, Saturday night.
In Nevada, we have just put together a multi-generational, multi-racial coalition, which is going to not only win in Nevada, it's going to sweep this country.
Earlier on Saturday, Sanders had visited the memorial outside the El Paso Walmart, where 22 people were killed, dozens wounded in a mass shooting in August. Former presidential candidate Marianne Williamson endorsed Bernie Sanders following his Nevada win. She wrote of her decision, quote, "A 40-year-old trend of capitalism without conscience, corporate elites and their errand boys in government have created the inevitable blowback in the form of a political revolution. That revolution is the one that Bernie Sanders now leads." Marianne Williamson previously endorsed Sanders' 2016 presidential bid. 7 presidential hopefuls will square off in another debate Tuesday night in South Carolina, ahead of the state's primary Saturday. 2 billionaires will appear on the stage, former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg and Tom Steyer, whose rising numbers in South Carolina's polls appear to be eroding Joe Biden's support. Meanwhile, calls are mounting for MSNBC host Chris Matthews to resign following his remarks comparing Senator Sanders' Nevada victory to Nazi Germany's takeover of France.
I'm reading last night about the fall of France in the summer of 1940, and the general, Renault, calls up Churchill and says, "It's over." And Churchill said, "How can it be? You got the greatest army in Europe. How can it be over?" He said, "It's over." So I had that suppressed feeling. I can't be as wild as Carville, but he is damn smart, and I think he's damn right on this one.
Bernie Sanders' communications director, Mike Kaska, responded to Matthews' comment on Twitter saying, quote, "Never thought part of my job would be pleading with a national news network to stop likening the campaign of a Jewish presidential candidate whose family was wiped out by the Nazis to the Third Reich. But here we are," he said. In China, President Xi Jinping described the coronavirus outbreak as the largest public health emergency since the founding of Communist China, as the government delayed the meeting of the National People's Congress for the first time in decades. Worldwide, the number of infections is nearing 80,000, with over 2,600 deaths. South Korea has issued the highest level of alert, as 6 people have now died from the disease, with over 800 infected. In Italy, 150 cases have now been confirmed, including 3 deaths. 10 Italian towns are now on lockdown, and the Venice Carnival was cut short. In Iran, 8 deaths have been reported, prompting border closures with Afghanistan and Turkey. Back in the United States, the Trump administration's backed off plans to house patients from the Diamond Princess cruise ship at a base in Alabama after local officials threatened to sue over the planned move. President Trump arrived in India today, where he appeared at a massive rally with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Gujarat. A reported 100,000 people packed a massive cricket stadium where Trump touted a $3.5 billion U.S.-India defense deal as he delivered a speech under the banner of Namaste Trump. Some rally-goers reportedly started leaving the event because Trump's remarks were not being translated. Trump also claimed, quote, "India is a country that proudly embraces freedom, liberty, individual rights despite the brutal government crackdown on Muslim Indians as it enacts its controversial new citizenship law and the ongoing repression in Kashmir." In Afghanistan, the U.S. military and the Taliban have begun a week-long partial truce ahead of the expected long-anticipated peace deal. The UN said in a report released Saturday, over 10,000 civilians were killed or injured from the ongoing conflict in 2019, and over 100,000 civilians have been killed or injured over the past decade. In Iran, conservative candidates affiliated with the Revolutionary Guards picked up the majority of parliamentary seats in an election that saw the lowest voter turnout since the 1979 revolution. Over 7,000 possible candidates were disqualified ahead of the elections, the first since the U.S. resumed harsh sanctions against Iran. In Gaza, a Palestinian man was killed Sunday by Israeli forces, prompting international outcry after a video went viral showing an Israeli bulldozer scraping up his body. The incident was followed by rocket fire from Gaza and Israeli airstrikes. Elsewhere in the occupied Palestinian territories, Israeli police shot dead a man in East Jerusalem Saturday. The police say he was attempting a stabbing. Meanwhile, Senator Bernie Sanders has said he will not attend the annual AIPAC conference again this year. That's the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee. He tweeted, quote, "The Israeli people have the right to live in peace and security. So do the Palestinian people. I remain concerned about the platform AIPAC provides for leaders who express bigotry and oppose basic Palestinian rights. For that reason, I will not attend their conference," Sanders tweeted. In Canada, Teck Resources has withdrawn its application for the $15.5 billion Alberta oil sands frontier mine days before the Canadian government of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was to announce whether it would allow the project to go ahead. It would have been the largest ever open pit mine and was expected to pump around 260,000 barrels of oil per day, producing 4.1 megatons of emissions each year. Indigenous and environmental groups have been sounding the alarm over the proposed mine. Last week, a group of Nobel Prize winners called on Trudeau to stop the Teck frontier mine. Indigenous Climate Action, which led the grassroots campaign against the project, celebrated the announcement, writing, quote, "Our communities need a just transition, not more fossil fuel resource extraction. We need to be in charge of our own futures, lands, and job opportunities that work to solve the climate crisis, address inequality, and respect our rights and sovereignty as Indigenous people," they said. Back in the United States, President Trump's new personnel chief, John McEntee, is reportedly directing agency heads to identify and purge anti-Trump staffers. Trump has tasked his former body man to rid agencies of the, quote, bad people and deep state. Trump also reportedly referred to anti-Trump employees as snakes. 29-year-old John McEntee was fired in 2018 by then-Chief of Staff General John Kelly because he was under investigation by Homeland Security for financial crimes. But McEntee was recently rehired to head the Personnel Office. Meanwhile, Axios is reporting the Trump administration's been gathering lists of disloyal government officials that they plan to kick out and replace with Trump loyalists. A network of Trump allies, including Jeannie Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, is reportedly charged with creating the lists. One of those targeted is former U.S. Attorney Jesse Liu, whom Trump withdrew for consideration for a top Treasury role earlier this month. Jesse Liu's memo reportedly mentions her signing the sentencing filing requesting jail time for Michael Flynn, as well as holding a leadership role in a women's lawyers group that is, quote, pro-choice and anti-Alito. The Supreme Court voted 5-4 Friday to allow Trump's so-called public charge rule to go ahead by lifting a lower court injunction on the rule in Illinois. The measure seeks to severely limit the number of low-income immigrants by denying green cards and visas to anyone who may seek benefits like Medicaid, food stamps, and housing vouchers. The Supreme Court lifted a nationwide injunction on the rule last month. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor delivered a scathing dissent, writing, quote, claiming one emergency after another, the government has recently sought stays in an unprecedented number of cases, demanding immediate attention and consuming limited court resources in each. And with each successive application, its cries of urgency ring increasingly hollow. The court has been all too quick to grant the government's reflexive requests. But make no mistake, such a shift in the court's own behavior comes at a cost, Justice Sotomayor wrote. In more immigration news, BuzzFeed reports a 34-year-old Mexican man has died while in the custody of ICE, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, at a hospital in Ohio. His death marks the 7th death of an immigrant while in ICE custody during the 2020 fiscal year. And here in New York City, thousands of people from the Dominican community took to the streets of Washington Heights Saturday to protest the suspension of local elections in the Dominican Republic earlier this month. Anti-government protests have been ongoing since last week after the Dominican Central Electoral Board blocked municipal elections, alleging there was a technical glitch in the electronic voting machines. Voters say it's part of an attempt by the ruling political party to hold on to power. These are voices from Saturday's protest in Washington Heights.
I'm a professional who had to migrate from my country in search of a better future for my daughter. My daughter's generation needs that we truly wake up and that we clean up our country for them.
I believe that the elections brought a conclusion to a series of events. This was the last drop in a country that has endured too many abuses and corruption.
The last voice was actress Laura Gomez of Orange is the New Black. Dominican Republic officials are reportedly investigating the alleged ballot machine glitches and have rescheduled the municipal elections for March 15th. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.